Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the first meeting of our newly renamed planning meetings. They are now called Growth and Sustainability. And prior to commencing the Growth and Sustainability meeting agenda, I would like to say a few things. Comments may be made from members of the public for a matter that is on the agenda by advising the chair during requests to address an item on the agenda section of tonight's agenda. The public may also submit written comments for matters that are on the agenda to jpaylove@westlincoln.ca before 4:30 on the day of the meeting for consideration by the committee, and comments received after 4:30 on that day of the day of the meeting will be considered at the following council meeting. Comments submitted are included in the record. This meeting will be live streamed as well as being recorded and available on the Township's website. Thank you. Now we will have the land acknowledgement. The Township of West Lincoln, being part of Niagara Region, is situated on treaty land. This land is steeped in the rich history of the First Nations, such as the Hattawindarok, the Haudenosaunee, and the Anishinaabe, including the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation. There are many First Nations, Métis, and Inuit from across Turtle Island that live and work in Niagara today. The Township of West Lincoln, as part of the Regional Municipality of Niagara, stands with all Indigenous people, past and present, in promoting the wise stewardship of the lands on which we live. Now, members of committee, I ask if there are any conflicts of interest or disclosure of pecuniary interest. Excuse me. Seeing none, we'll continue. The first item on our agenda, pardon me, is a public meeting. Okay. This is a zoning bylaw amendment and draft plan of subdivision submitted by NPG Planning Solutions Incorporated and Smithville Holdings. The properties consist of Concession 9, Part 5, 1601-003-23, and 2000-92-24. The Planning Act requires in Section 34, Sub 12, and Section 39 that before passing a zoning bylaw amendment, Council must hold at least one public meeting for the purpose of informing the public in respect of an application. The purpose of this meeting is to receive comments and answer questions from the public regarding the proposed zoning bylaw amendment. We stress at this point that no decisions have been made on the proposed amendment, and any comments received will be taken into account by Council in their consideration. In accordance with the Planning Act and the Minister, the applicant or specified person, public body, or registered landowner of any land to which the bylaw amendment will apply, who made oral submissions at a public meeting or written submissions to Council prior to the adoption and or passage of the bylaw, may appeal the bylaw amendment to the Ontario Land Tribunal. Mr. Clerk, or Mr. CAO, yes. I know we have a double duty fellow here tonight. Would you please advise of the method and dates on which notice was given?
Thank you, Chair. Proper notice was given by way of email circulation to agencies and mail circulation to all residents within 120 meters of the subject property on January 8th, 2025. Public notice was also posted to the subject property, the Township website, and the Township Administration Building on January 8th, 2025.
Thank you. I believe that the carriage of this file sits with Susan Smythe. Ms. Smythe, would you please explain the purpose and reason for the zoning bylaw amendment?
Public that are here this evening. I'm here to present the information report on the applications that the Growth and Sustainability Department received as a complete package in early of December 2024. I will be giving a high-level overview of the applications that was provided by the owner, Smithville Holdings, Inc., of which includes the zoning bylaw amendment and draft plan of subdivision. Please be advised that the agent and consulting representatives from Niagara Planning Group, NPG, are here to provide a presentation following my review of these applications. The proposed development is located north of St. Catherine Street and east of Industrial Park Road and south of the Canadian Pacific KC Railway line. The The subject lands have a developable land area of 7.68 hectares or 18.9 acres, with 215 meters of frontage on St. Catherine Street. You could see here on the image shown, delineated in red as the approximate location of this site. The subject lands are part of the East Smithville Secondary Plan area, of which the plan had received council approval in February of 2022. The plan is for approximately 32 hectares of designated greenfield land area, which is focused to be developed with mixed uses at higher densities and to function as a prominent gateway into the urban area of Smithville. The lands are currently zoned as development, and as proposed in the amending bylaw application, the lands are to change to allow for site-specific provisions for low and medium-density residential, mixed uses, open space, and environmental protection conservation, and employment business park uses. The proposal is forecasting 329 residential units, which consist of a 6-story retirement home building with 104 dwelling units, an 8-story apartment building with 152 dwelling units, and 750 square meters of ground floor commercial, 3 single detached dwelling units, 36 semi-detached dwelling units, and 34 street townhouse dwelling units. In terms of employment and jobs, the development is forecasting approximately 94 jobs, which consists of 22 within the business park, 16 jobs in the commercial units within the mixed-use condominium building on the ground floor, and also provisions for 56 jobs as live-work units. For the parking considerations, the single, semi-detached, and street townhouse units will have 2 parking spaces per unit, tandem parking, that being with 1 in the garage and 1 allocated in the driveway, and roughly 35 on-street parking spaces for visitors. The mixed-use building is proposing 224 parking spaces, with 74 at-grade spaces and 150 underground. This equates to a 1.25 spaces per dwelling unit ratio. Additionally, the calculation is considering 1 space per 30 square meters for the commercial units, 9 accessible barrier-free, and 30 bicycle spaces. The retirement home is proposing 104 parking spaces, which is surface spaces, which equates to 1 per dwelling unit. The development also proposes the 20-unit business park employment condominium type of a layout, which is anticipated to facilitate some light industrial and commercial type units. The parking proposed for that business park is 102 spaces. The proposal will have a shared main access off of Regional Road 20, the roundabout, as the main collector road into the development. The applicant for this development is responsible for 10 meters of the shared access, and the balance of 10 meters for a combined of 20-meter right-of-way is with the proposed development located to the east, of which applications for zoning amendment and draft plan of subdivision are currently under preliminary review by staff. Off the main collector road will be 4 local roads meeting the 20-meter right-of-way requirement. 3 of them will also have a temporary turning bulb that will terminate at the western limit until the lands to the west move forward with any future development plans, which will eventually connect to Industrial Park Road. The timing of any future development to the west of the subject lands are unknown at this time. Lastly, the parkland, as part of the development, will serve the requirements for this development as well as to the east. There will be a multi-use trail that runs east-west along the railroad corridor and connects to the development to the east. And there will be the environmental protection conservation block that forms part of the development. Supporting the proposed development were various technical studies that were included with the submission and are available on the website for further information. In terms of the zoning provisions, that is found in the information report on page 10 and 11, and I won't necessarily go through all of them, but they are there for consideration. So at this time, I would like to reiterate that the purpose of this report was for information. And at this time, it may be a good opportunity to provide and invite the agent and consultant to provide their presentation to offer any more details. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Smythe.
Hello? Okay. Thank you, Susan, through the mayor. My name is Max Fedishak. I'm a planner with NPG Planning Solutions. I'm here today to present on behalf of our client, Smithville's Holdings, applications for a draft plan of subdivision and zoning bylaw amendment for the lands located on the north side of St. Catherine Street in Smithville. I'm joined by Jesse Ospitz, principal planner of NPG Planning, and also Colin Dugan, the project engineer, in the audience, as well as the ownership group. The subject lands are located on the north side of St. Catherine Street, immediately northwest of the existing roundabout. The property features 215 meters of frontage along St. Catherine Street and has a total area of 7.68 hectares. The property is designated as being greenfield lands within the Smithville urban area within the Niagara official plan. Greenfield lands are locations for growth and development within the region, with the region establishing a minimum density of 50 residents and jobs per hectare for these areas. The West Lincoln official plan designates these lands as being within the East Smithville secondary plan with designations for mixed use, low and medium density residential, and business park uses. The lands are currently zoned D for development. St. Catherine Street is designated as a regional road. Regional roads are intended for higher traffic volumes and are the preferred location for higher density development. The subject lands are located approximately 500 meters east of a large commercial plaza and approximately 1 kilometer east of the Smithville core. A variety of industrial uses are located to the north via Industrial Park Road, and the lands immediately east and west of the subject lands are also designated for development, and the proposed development will integrate with the future development of these adjacent lands. So briefly, some contextual analysis. On the left, this is a photo of the subject lands taken from St. Catherine Street looking north. And on the right is the photo of the existing roundabout at the subject lands. The proposed development consists of a draft plan of subdivision and zoning bylaw amendment applications. The draft plan of subdivision is proposed to subdivide the lands, and the rezoning will permit the lands to be developed. Within the development concept are 5 new public roads. Street A, being along the eastern property line, is proposed to be shared with the future development of the property to the east. Streets B, C, and D will travel in an east-west orientation, connecting the future development to the west and the future development to the east. Several zones are proposed, including an open space zone providing a trail along the northern property line, which will feature an acoustic barrier, an open space zone for park use, an environmental conservation zone in the northwestern corner, a development zone, and a business park zone, housing 20 business park units. A variety of residential zones are also proposed, which will provide a total of 329 residential units. This includes a commercial mixed-use CM zone featuring 104 retirement home units, 152 apartment dwelling units, and 8,137 square feet of ground floor commercial space. The CM zone is proposed to feature a maximum height of 27.5 meters and a parking ratio of 1.25 spaces per dwelling unit. A residential multiple RM2 zone is proposed to contain 34 townhouse units and 8 semi-detached units, and an R3 zone is proposed featuring 3 single-detached dwellings and 20 semi-detached dwellings. So the following slide shows a conceptual rendering of the proposed site layout of the CM zones along the southern property line, including the 104 six-story retirement building to the left and the 152-unit 8-story apartment building with ground floor commercial on the right. So as Susan mentioned, the subject lands are located within the East Smithville secondary plan. The secondary plan was prepared via a public consultation process to guide the future development of the East Smithville area and was approved by Township Council on February 28, 2022. It is the intent of the East Smithville secondary plan for the lands to be developed with a mix of uses and densities to function as a future prominent gateway into the urban area of Smithville. The subject lands are outlined in red, and the secondary plan envisions mixed-use development along the southern property line, medium-density residential north of that in the orange area, with lower-density residential and open space uses proposed above that. The northern portion of the property line is envisioned to be business park usage. This slide shows the proposed development concept overlaid over the East Smithville secondary plan. As you can see, the proposed development nearly perfectly aligns with the official secondary plan designations of the subject lands and the vision for the area, including all open space and public roads. Briefly, several public comments were received ahead of tonight's public meeting. One comment was raised regarding increased traffic at Industrial Park Road and St. Catherine Street and potential signalization of this intersection. It is anticipated that following complete build-out, future connections will be provided to Industrial Park Road in accordance with the secondary plan. So Street B along the north, traveling west would provide that connection. We've reached out to the Niagara region, and the region has noted that they're monitoring the intersection to see if signals will be required, and a future signalization will occur if their warrants are met. A question was also raised regarding permitting retail uses within the business park, and just to confirm that retail uses are proposed to be permitted in the business park location as well. There is a question regarding a sidewalk along St. Catherine Street. We note that there's an existing sidewalk along the southern side of St. Catherine Street, but ultimately it will be up to the Niagara region to install a sidewalk within the road allowance on the northern side of the street following full development. Finally, there was a question regarding wildlife. These lands are designated as greenfield for development. Scoped EIS was conducted to investigate the potential fish habitat on the lands in the northwestern corner. The EIS confirmed that the site is not of a quality or function consistent with type 2 fish habitat. A 10-meter buffer is proposed along the watercourse to provide sufficient space for protection and enhancement. And these lands are proposed to be rezoned to EC, environmental conservation, to protect the watercourse. So to summarize, we believe that the official plan, the draft plan of subdivision and zoning bylaw amendments should be approved as they're consistent with the provincial planning statement, the Niagara official plan, and the East Smithville secondary plan, facilitates compact and residential growth within the urban area, contributes to the diversification of housing options within the township, and provides employment opportunities and the protection of natural features. So I guess I'll leave it there and be ready to answer any questions of council.
I was waiting to see if your colleague was going to be addressing us as well. Sufficient? Okay. Are there any oral or written submissions from anyone present in the meeting, either by Zoom or in person, regarding the proposed zoning bylaw amendment? Before I go further with that, I'd like to stress that this may be the only public meeting held with respect to this application. If you are attending virtually and would like to provide comments, you can do so by using one of two options. There's only one. There's two. Using a computer or smartphone, select the raise your hand control that can be found on the Zoom options list displayed on your screen, or two, using a landline or telephone, dial *9. That will notify staff that you have raised your hand. Kevin, do we have anybody online wishing to speak?
Not seeing any, Madam Chair.
Thank you. And is there anyone present that is wishing to come forward and speak to the item on the table? Seeing no one, and having read the fact that this may be the only public meeting, I turn to members of committee. Is there anyone wishing to speak to the item? I'll start on my right. No, it's okay. It's okay, Mr. Counselor. It's just that earlier in the meeting, my colleague and yours defined my way of accepting speakers, and he said she'll always go to her right. So you, as the first speaker and former chair, I will go to you, and we'll go around the room.
Okay, appreciate that. Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you to Susan there. I guess, or not so much, I guess I'll just put this out there. When I look at this, obviously I don't think we've seen something of this size in a very long time in our community. And so I know there's no date that was available when shovels would be going in the ground. I think that would be, I realize, we don't have a crystal ball and we can't really see when that would be. It'd be nice if there was like an estimation just for the public to be aware of when this kind of change is coming to our community, if it were to be supported as is. I guess some of the things I'd like to see is what types of traffic calming measures would be considered to help mitigate some of the problematic areas that we already have in our community with the increasement of population and the little bit of aggression we're noticing now, not so much a little, but quite a bit of aggression in driving. Want to make sure as we go forward that there is actual safeguards in place. We don't have to enforce that, so we really rely, if we're going to take something like this on, rely on us constructing these roads in a way that helps manage and hopefully reduce the speed of motorists. So I don't know if there could be, if the presenters, through you, Madam Chair, maybe to one of the presenters, if there's if you can foresee anything along the way that would kind of give council and the public some assurance that some kind of traffic calming measure could be taken into consideration as you get to that next stage, especially in design. That's certainly something that's on my mind. I will also mention that, though, I guess maybe through you, Madam Chair, to our senior planner. Our senior planner. If the 1.25 parking, is that, if you correct me if I'm wrong, but is that the minimum that is required through the province?
Through you, Madam Chair, to Councillor Riley. So as per the zoning bylaw,
Yep.
Right now, the provision is for 1.75 per unit.
Okay.
So there is a reduction in that circumstance for the mixed use.
Okay, so we're actually going, the recommendation right now, not so much recommendation, but the proposal right now is actually to go 0.5 lower than what we would normally be doing.
That is correct.
Okay, so that's a concern for me right at this point, because as we know, parking's really hard to come by in our community, so hopefully that's something that we could look into, meeting a little bit closer to that 2.0. People aren't moving in to homes with 1.2 cars. I know it's an average overall, but more times than not, just considering the geographic area of our community, it is a bedroom community. You have to drive up here. You don't have a local transit or anything dependable like that. So the 1.25 hopefully can be looked into. And and so that being said, I think I'll just make a brief comment about seeking clarity. Again, I think I have the answer, but maybe even for the public. So through you, Madam Chair, back to our senior planner. The current proposal here has a 6-story and 8-story as a potential structure in our community. I believe that is over at least our official plan. If correct me if I'm wrong, but is that not 5 stories is the max that we currently permit?
Again, through you, Madam Chair. Actually, for the mixed use under the secondary plan, the maximum building height is a 6-story.
It's a 6-story?
Correct.
Okay.
So yes, one of the buildings exceeds that height requirement. So there's one of the requested relief for that.
Okay. And so that's another interesting matter as we've got people coming into the urban area that you're going to have something we've never really seen before. Now through you, Madam Chair, to maybe our director, our director of planning. What is the tallest structure that we have in our community? I don't think it's 6 stories. Pardon me? Yeah. I see that, Madam Chair.
Through the chair to Councillor Riley, I think the tallest residential structure we have is 3.5 stories. We'd have some non-residential structures, such as the old feed mill, that were taller than that, but these would be the tallest buildings in Smithville.
Okay, thank you. That's a lot to take, I think, for a community in our current shape there. I certainly am open to ideas and seeing how we proceed forward. I certainly would like to see maybe a little reduction there if possible in some of the units, but I understand there's a push, through the province regarding trying to, meet some housing targets, that we got to be creative and we have to look at different types of usage in terms, or mixed types of homes and intensifications, but the 8-story definitely seems quite up there. And so maybe I'll just leave my questions there for now, Madam Chair. I might ask to speak to us one more time.
Thank you, Councillor Riley. Mayor Ganan?
Hello? If I may, oh, I'm sorry. Am I able to?
Yeah. Oh, I apologize. I was busy taking notes.
Me too.
Please,
Through the
please
chair.
address.
So to address a few of your comments, appreciate you going in great detail for that. So for the parking, we are proposing a 1.25. As Susan said, the municipal zoning requirement as of right now is 1.75 per apartment dwelling unit. Parking impact study was conducted by a transportation engineer. They looked at comparable sites within the municipality, acknowledging that there's not that many comparables for apartment buildings within Smithville. They also looked at other developments in the West Niagara, Burlington area. From their studies, the peak demand of higher density dwelling units was 1.05 per unit, and the peak visitor demand was, the average visitor demand, apologies, was 0.09, so approximately 0.1 per unit, totaling a 1.15. So based on the parking demand analysis, the proposed development would have sufficient space for the uses. There is the mixed use component of the development, so we are providing additional parking for the commercial uses, which will be on the main floor of that property to the southwestern corner. So due to the fact that those businesses are expected to typically operate 9 to 9 or roughly within those hours, there's the shared parking principle, which in the off-peak hours of business, in the evenings, weekends, and whatnot, those parking spaces would be available for the residential uses. Furthermore, there is which was submitted a parking plan, which essentially outlined, I believe there's 35 additional informal parking spaces provided throughout the public roads. So yes, we are proposing the 1.25, and the 1.25 we believe will be sufficient. There will be additional parking based on shared parking and roadway parking as well.
So if I may, Madam Chair, just while you're talking about the parking, and through you, Madam Chair, to the presenter, if that idea that there could be some shared parking when the businesses aren't open 9 to 5, like that's not really convenient to residents who may want to park there overnight and then find out the next day they're getting ticketed or towed because, you know, if it's a business facility, they're going to have signs or warnings. So we can't take that into consideration as far as the convenience of use to the residents that'd be living nearby there, right? So I just want to make sure, as you mentioned, that's not really a selling point. That's more of like, if someone can park there, great, but realities are business needs to function, and if people are parked there who shouldn't be parked there aren't doing business, or are they going to get ticketed or towed? So, like, again, just for understanding there, I don't think that's something we can consider a win when it comes to terms of meeting the needs are for parking, not the targets of the province.
Yeah. Do you want to jump in?
Sorry. Would I be able to add? In addition to the parking study, we also looked at all of the municipalities in the Niagara region in terms of what their parking rates. For the most part, parking rates for apartment units are 1.25 spaces per unit. So West Lincoln's requirement is in excess of what its peers require, and that's like from the standard, not in terms of site specifics. And in terms of the shared parking, this would be more related, that is more applicable to visitors. There is different peak and off-peak times, so it would be a visitor may be able to use one of the shared parking spaces. So it wouldn't, residents would have their own dedicated spaces, but a visitor may use one of the shared spaces.
Okay, and I appreciate that, and Madam Chair, if I could go to presenter number 2, and I appreciate that explanation. I think you got to understand that West Lincoln isn't like any other of our neighbors. We're in a very unique situation where we're placed, so I respect the rationale around the 1.25, but there's a certain reason why we need to be closer to that 2 mark, that 2 target, but I get where you're coming from, and right now this is just your presentation, not necessarily forming an opinion, just trying to digest it all, but I definitely have some hesitancy around that number. But sorry, go ahead, I don't know if you had more to your thing. If not, I think it's the mayor's turn.
Please.
Oh, sorry. Jesse, do you have anything else? Okay. You're good. The only thing through the chair, that I would have added to that is essentially what my colleague has said. The 1.25 based on comparable examples within the region, the Institute of Transportation Engineers and the case studies, the 1.25 is anticipated to be sufficient for the residential uses and the visitor use. The shared parking principle, as my colleague said, would be, visitors coming and spending a night type of thing, and there would be sufficient for occasional influxes. If I may move to the density, just wanted to clarify, the East Smithville secondary plan does permit maximum heights of 6 stories, but there is a provision that enables height greater than 6 stories without an official plan amendment, provided that a detailed analysis of urban design is conducted. We did do that urban design analysis that's been submitted to the township, so hence why only zoning relief is being requested. We are consistent with the official plan on that front based on those policies. I may toss it over to Jesse here as he wanted to touch on traffic and road calming.
Sorry, I was sorry through the chair. I was more just wanting some clarification. If it was traffic and calming measures during construction, or if it was traffic and calming post-construction, like as a permanent matter.
Yeah, so through you, Madam Chair, to presenter number 2, it would be permanent.
Okay.
So like I would ideally like both through you, Madam Chair, because obviously we want to make sure people are safe, as it's being constructed, but the most important thing is, managing traffic after it's already been developed and you guys have moved on. We got to live with that. So that's more specifically what I was looking for.
Sorry, through the chair, we're open to including traffic and calming measures as part of the development process. However, those are more refined during the detailed engineering process.
Thank you, and that's what I mentioned as we get closer to design and everything. So that's all, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Mayor Gannon.
Thank you. So very briefly, I just wanted to respond partly to my colleague, Madam Chair, through you, about the fact that it's too bad the feed mill is now down, because the original height of 6 stories was chosen because of the height of the tower. The highest point in the feed mill was 6 stories, so that people would be actually able to visualize what it was that we were talking about when we started talking about 6 stories. It was something that, although we don't have apartments, they were familiar with. I'm going to not ask any more questions. I've been through quite a lot. I thought the parking was being fairly well addressed, and I know that much more will be done as you zero in eventually. I just want to make a comment about, as mayor, I hear quite regularly from older adults and the fact that there's no place for them to go. And I hear quite regularly from our businesses that are expanding and growing that there is no place for their employees to live. So I just want to say I think probably there's still further work that needs to be done on this, but I certainly think it's something that Smithville needs. We've talked about it isn't like Smithville of old, and Smithville of old is not going to be Smithville of old if we're going to grow, but this is the first step. This is the first actual thing that we have seen in terms of a concrete application coming forward. We are going to over time see more. And I trust that our staff will be able to sort of meet that out accordingly so that people see growth happen gradually. But we have had this in place, as we know, since February of 22. So for 3 years, we've had that secondary plan in place, ready to move on it. And we also have now our urban boundary expansion, and this is not even part of that. This is inside our existing boundary long before we did our expansion plan. So I think we just need the public to understand that, and we need the residents who are currently here that are looking forward to something know that we are also hoping to see something move ahead. So that's all, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And you stole my thunder as usual, but the old mill was a commercial building where floor heights are higher than in a residential building. And so that, too, added to the height of what it is we expected our tallest building to be. I'm not giving you a guideline, but I'm just saying that height would have been that building, which was a commercial feed mill. Councillor Rayner? Councillor Machak?
I'll just be very brief, and Councillor Riley did touch on it. In an ideal world, when would you like to get started, and when do you hope to finish if everything went smoothly?
Question for.
Sorry, through the chair, would we be able to get the ownership group to respond to that?
It's just a short question, but sure.
Through the chair,
You have to come up. I keep forgetting to turn my microphone on and off, but there's people out there in Cyberland that want to hear.
Through the chair, through us in Kentville Corporation, we're willing to start ASAP. The funding is in place. It's just a matter of having things moving because we're here to help the community develop, bring in according to the provincial mandates. So for us, I mean, we could start tomorrow.
Thank you. Councillor Bradrick.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and through you to the presenters. Thank you very much for your presentation. I had a couple of questions. One is, I know this is conceptual, however, you did describe one of the buildings, the smaller of the two, the 6-story, being a retirement home. And in the conceptual drawings, it didn't appear to be an assisted living dwelling. So what exactly, do you have an idea of what that means? Is it an assisted living retirement home, or is it something that is really exactly the same as the apartment, but for older adults?
Sorry, through the chair. That's something that needs to be refined a little bit more. But the intent is for it to be, for it to be a retirement home. The exact services that would be provided, I don't have that, but it would have services catered towards seniors. It would be as per the definition of retirement home.
Okay, I'm not sure if that answers my question, but again, this is, a higher level concept, unless the owners group has a better idea of what they mean by that. Through you, Chair.
Maybe enlighten the, yeah, sure, thank you. I'm Lou DiLeonardo. I'm the landowner to the east. Just maybe a refresher. We came in end of July, and we kind of give you an idea of what we're doing. Just so there's an understanding, both of us developers have already joined forces with engineering. We're working together. So just to enlighten everybody on what our plans are, because there's a lot of questions going back and forth, retirement home, care facility. Both these developments are hopefully going to come in together. So what we want to provide is a variation of possibilities for the new people coming into Smithville. So there is a retirement home slated on that property. There's a condo building slated on that property. On my side, we have a lot of mixed use. We're thinking about senior apartments. When you talk about assisted living, these are all things we're looking at. Our goal is to make that almost like a community with itself, that has all of the amenities, and it's going to cater to all facets of living as far as individuals, young, old. We want a bit of everything. We really want to do a really nice painting on this canvas. So if there's anything that you guys want to talk about or even have suggestions, by all means, get a hold of me or Enzo. We'll be more than happy to sit down with you and explain where we're trying to go with this. But I can assure you, we're going to have a bit of everything. We want to target, to Mr. Riley's point about building size, and it's not in our community. Well, it's a new era right now with housing requirements that the narrative out there is the shortage of housing. As a builder developer, we also got to attain the fact that we got to be able to build something with enough margin, with enough ability to make it cost effective. So again, to your point, 6 stories worth versus 8 is huge. It's huge in numbers when you're trying to meet a target on what you want to sell. So reducing a story or 2, you may think it's not a lot. The bigger grand scale of things, it might lift the cost unit of an apartment by $20,000, $30,000. So there's a lot of things in motion here when it comes to housing. In both these developments, we're going to have senior building, condos. We're going to have stacked towns. We're going to have back-to-backs for entry level. And then we want to do a nice community between both parcels where, even though we have a parkland, we're also designing that when we do something, there's going to be little nice areas for young families to live and play in. The north side of both developments along the railroad track, if you really take a look at the plan, there's a lot of greenery there. This is going to be a really nice community. And we want to work with the township if you have any visions, but please don't underestimate the fact that in order to be providing an affordable living space, whether you're young, whether you're old, or whether you're new, it's all one. So we have to make it work. And by all means, if you have any suggestions while we're at this, again, this is the preliminary stages to the point of when we want to start. My last presentation back in July was that we are self-financing. We want to start the Enzo Faime. The retirement home is already under design. The condo building is already under design. And we're already working together about the apartment complexes for seniors or regular. So we have the whole ball rolling. At the end of the day, the other question was, when do you think you could have shovels in the ground? That's all up to the township and the region, because this is a bigger picture here. There's a lot of land that needs to be moved, a lot of on-site and off-site. We would really like to have shovels in the ground for the off-site sewers on Highway 20 to prep this year and start getting the on-site land conditions ready. Because realistically, if that doesn't happen, nothing else could happen. So when could we start building? Number one, as soon as we get the okays to go, we're ready to go. But let's face it, there's really not going to be anything happening as far as construction probably until 2026. Okay, I don't want to disillusion council. The fact of the matter is there's a lot of groundwork to be done. There's a lot of prep work, and the prep work is all underground and off-site. It's enormous. If we're ready to front-end it, we want to go with that this year. And if, God willing, we can get the start on the retirement home and the condo building, that could also happen while everything is happening, because that condo building and that retirement home is going to be at least a 2-year venture from start to finish. So realistically, you want to have a really nice frontage on the gateway. Never mind what we're planning for the other side too. So the curb appeal, everything has to all blend in. But timing, you're not going to see anything other than 2026, 2027. If somebody was to ask me what our plans are right now for the actual housing units, the lower tiered availability of bringing young families into Smithville, I've already researched the closest municipality here is Bimbrook. Back-to-backs start at 575. I was there 2 weekends ago. So we have to make a target range where there's affordability coming into here, because our investment money is on the clock. So we want to get it going. 2027, 2026 is probably start of construction. And if we're ready to go on 2025 by the end of this year for off-site, we'd love to do it. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Yeah, just a comment through you, Madam Chair, in regards to Councillor Riley's comments about the parking and the 1.25 parking spots per unit. And just to kind of join on to him and what he said about West Lincoln being unique in regards to its needs. We do not have public transit like most of our comparables. And so with great hesitation, I certainly think that 1.25 would not be sufficient. Driving throughout some of our newer subdivisions, you can see that. And young families, even as they migrate into more mature families, have teenagers with cars and children living with them until they're nearly 30 or 40 because they can't afford their own houses. So we definitely want to keep that into consideration. So that's all my comments. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Braddock. Councillor
Last but
Trombetta.
not least,
Well,
I guess.
actually, I'll go around if there's another round necessary. So,
That's okay, I don't think so. I think
Okay.
this will be probably the final one, unless I raise some questions with other members of committee. Just a couple comments I got to make. Obviously, going to the right, some of them steal my thunder when I wanted to make some comments. So, you know, I do get a lot from our residents, a lot from the big business owners on trying to attract people to work for their companies. There's no place for them to go, especially our two biggest employers in the municipality. We've all been inside their businesses, and they've said, you know, they have trouble with attraction because people are coming from outside to work inside, and there's nowhere for them to live. So, you know, it looks like we are needing something. We have, especially even our rural residents have came to us. They, you know, they're getting older and their properties are bigger out there where we are, and they can't maintain the properties anymore, but they don't want to be forced out of West Lincoln. They want to live in West Lincoln. And there's the other residents that have their children that are looking for residency to live in, and they don't want their children leaving West Lincoln, and they want to live in West Lincoln. So we have to have an area for some of our residents to go. I don't want to see our residents being forced out of our municipality. So that's one thing that is really hard to, I guess, near and dear to me, because you hear it from a lot of the residents. I've spent the past 40, 50 years, if not longer, in this municipality, and they want to stay in this municipality. Question through you, Madam Chair, to Director DePaula. Obviously, a project at this magnitude is a lot of infrastructure needs are needed for this. So obviously, we talk, and the developers, Mr. DiLeonardo mentioned that, you know, there's ready for residential, retirement or condo, but there's a lot of flushing toilets. Do we have sewer capacities here, or we have a lot of upgrades? Now, they did say it's going to be front-ended or by the developers, but it's a big-size project. I know it's a lot of sewer upgrades. I know that and everybody's shaking their heads there. So where are we with that, through you, Madam Chair, to Director DePaula?
Through Madam Chair to Councillor Trombetta. Is this on? Yep. Okay. As part of their application, the developer submitted a functional servicing report. So they provided a conceptual plan of how this site would be serviced from a storm water perspective, as well as water and sanitary. So the stormwater, it's Susan's report lays out what the functional servicing report says and what our comments were from Public Works and the Operations Department, as well as planning and the regional staff. From a stormwater perspective, they're conveying the storm sewer from that parcel outlined in red to our appropriate design standards, and will be directing their storm sewer to the parcel to the east, and that's where the stormwater management pond will be. So that'll all get worked out through detailed design. From a water perspective, their functional servicing report shows the connection to the existing water system. When the township did their master community plan, the water strategy for this site was it was connected to the regional 400 main that is planned for the future. So it's something that we got our consultant do a peer review to see if there is capacity in the existing water system to service this site, or perhaps it could be phased depending on what capacity is there. But our water and wastewater master servicing plan has identified that this site should be connected to a future regional water main. From a sanitary perspective, once again, the one property owner mentioned that they're willing to front end a storm sewer on Highway 20. Again, that's what our master servicing plan has identified, a new storm sewer on Highway 20, because there's currently no, sanitary sewer on Highway 20, because there's currently no sanitary sewers across this property. So that infrastructure needs to be in place, as well as the capacity at the Smithville pumping station, which is a regional asset, that needs to be reviewed as well. So there's different strategies on seeing if there's capacity there. It could be through flow monitoring, I&I reduction. That could be part of the solution. Another opportunity is to phase the development based on what capacity is there, or undertaking the necessary upgrades to the regional infrastructure to pumping station to allow the full build out of this development. So that all get worked out throughout the planning process and throughout the review of the functional servicing report.
Sorry, through Madam Chair, through Director Paul. So if the pumping station needs to be upgraded, that's going to have to be, obviously, that's not going to be front-ended by the developers. That's more or less the region needs to step in with that. Is that correct?
Through Madam Chair to Councillor Trombetta, it all depends what the region's plan is for their pumping station and when they have it identified in the forecast, in their capital budget forecast. If it's not identified in a timely manner, then the region will enter into discussions with the developer to potentially front-end that work.
Okay, so there's still some questions still unanswered that was before this. So the timeframes are out still a bit, but they're kind of more for some answers for some shovels in the ground. But other than that, I think those are important questions that needed to be answered by myself or from the director. So I'm glad that you had that information for us, and see what comes in the future. Thanks, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Trombetta. I do have a few questions before, unless there are more questions to my right. Seeing none on the left, I'll remind you that, like members of the public, this committee must make their comments now, as the OLT may not consider comments made at any other council or committee meeting. And having said that, if I see no one else, if you'll indulge me, I have a couple of questions. And that is, with the 104-unit retirement home, which you're indicating is a retirement home, not a long-term care or an assisted living. So that would not mean that there would be opportunity in this building to do age in place. So there wouldn't be any long-term care beds, because my next question would be, are you looking for government licensing, which would then control costs, but would also offer someone a place close by to be close to family in a long-term care facility?
Through the chair, if we may, could we provide more details on what in writing on what is contemplated for the retirement home? It's just we haven't gone over too much into detailed design yet, and some of that would come throughout the process. So we will, if we may, we would like to regroup and come up with something in writing, so you would have that for the time of decision.
Well, the one thing, that's fine. I'm willing to listen to that, but this is a public meeting. I'm looking for consideration or your comments about what would occur in that building. And if it's simply a retirement home, meaning a for-profit home where people would go to live in a facility that's mostly designed for seniors, it would not be a long-term care. And those licenses are available right now because the province is looking for a number of over 2,000 more spaces in long-term care. So if you were going to do that, there'd be a process you would have to go through as the owner or as the proposed owner of the long-term care. So I'd be interested in understanding that you're open to that or not. That's the nature of the question.
I'm sure the ownership group would be open to having a retirement home or a long-term care home.
That was the kind of question I was looking for, is if they're still open, as we're willing to listen, and our staff would certainly be willing to understand. The apartment building is my next question. I'm moving on. I think he tried to answer, saying you'll come back with more details as we go along. And this is a public meeting where I'm just trying to get the sense of what you're doing. I'm not trying to nail down or make conclusions on what it is you're happening. The apartment building that I'm hearing about, I keep hearing apartment building, but I don't hear the word condo until I look at the picture that was shown here. So it's a condo apartment building, meaning that people would have to buy, and this would be not a rental but an ownership building.
Yeah, through the chair, yes, it's the type of buildings defined as an apartment building within the zoning bylaw, so that's why we've been using that term. However, it will be condominiumized upon
completion.
Yeah.
Okay, so on these buildings that you're asking for 8 floors, it just struck me as people were talking, and even though there might be additional height that is different than a 6-story residential, I have 2 questions. One is, mechanicals still sit on top of the building. So in fact, you would be 8 stories plus the mechanicals on top. Is that correct? I'll go to my own staff first. Ms. Smythe?
Through you, Madam Chair, typically in building height, And I will confirm, but usually those mechanicals, elevator shafts, those are exempted from the building height.
Understood, but I'm looking for just a complete understanding as to the height. You will still have those elements above the 8 stories.
Typically, yes.
Right. Thank you. And the other thing is, how many floors of commercial are we looking at on the buildings that are going to be there? Is it just simply ground floor related? So 1 floor?
Through the chair, yes. What ground floor commercial for the apartment building block?
Okay. So my last question is, I guess to our own staff, with the servicing of this, and I understand it's tight, and there will have to be discussion about whether it works or not, but further into town to the west is existing Smithville. And if that's the case, then that would be infill, and in our industrial area and along St. Catharines would need or is privileged to have existing servicing available to them. Is the servicing that this entire complex is going to need going to compromise any of our infill or our industrial parks servicing, or will that study show that we will need front-ending of an advanced or, pardon me, an enlargement of our services, not to compromise what is existing in Smithville in that area?
Okay, through the chair. Basically, our existing sanitary and our existing water system has the capacity or is meant to service intensification in the existing built-up area, let's say. So that's something that we review when we get the functional servicing report. And as I mentioned earlier, when the township did their master community plan, we looked at all, we looked at this property as well, like the East Smithville secondary plan, as well as some other secondary plans, to see what the best way to service these secondary plans would be. So that the plan has been identified in our water and wastewater master plan on how this property should be serviced. So it would require new sanitary sewer, so that will not affect the existing intensification of the built-up area. And it has identified how the water should be serviced. So once again, it wouldn't impact the intensification. So the servicing plan has kind of been developed at a conceptual level. So we just got to try to stick to the existing servicing plan as best possible.
That's fine. Pardon me. And I wasn't looking for de facto. I was just wondering whether we are so tight. Pipes aren't elastic, unfortunately. So I wanted to make sure we were not going to compromise anything in the industrial core. So thank you very much, Mr. DiPaolo. Seeing no further comments from any members of committee, please be advised that a technical report is being considered by the committee this evening. Please also be advised that once committee and/or council have made the decision with respect to the zoning bylaw amendment, and if approved by council, a notice of their passing will be circulated with an appeal period. If you wish to be notified of council's decision, please ensure that you email the township clerk, Justin Palove at jpalove@westlincoln.ca. Anyone who is interested in observing council and or committee discussions about a particular bylaw should not solely rely on mailed notices and thus potentially miss the opportunity to attend applicable meetings. It is suggested that you watch the township's website for the postings of agendas to review items that will be discussed at council and or committees. The agendas for meetings are posted on the township's website after 4 p.m. on the Friday prior to the meeting. Additionally, meeting schedules are also posted on the township's website for the public to view. If you wish to receive notices by email, it is suggested that you contact the township clerk to advise of your request and include your email address along with your mailing address and your phone number. That concludes our public meeting for this evening, and I declare that the public meeting with respect to the proposed zoning bylaw amendment is concluded at the hour of 7:31.
Thank you.
Is there any wish to change the order of items on the agenda, members of committee? A request, appointments, there are none. A request to address items on the agenda. 1 hour in total shall be allocated for this section of the agenda, and each individual person shall only be provided with 5 minutes to address their issue. A response may not be provided on the matter, and it may be referred to staff. A person who wishes to discuss planning application or a matter that can be appealed will be permitted to speak for 10 minutes. Are there members of the public wishing to address committee? Seeing none, I will move on to consent agenda items, of which there are none. So, and communications, there are none of those either. So staff report 10.1. That's an information report relating to the changes to the Ontario Building Code 2024. We'll have a bit of an overview from our Chief Building Officer, CBO, Chief Building Officer. But the recommendation associated with that report is that the information report BLDG-02-2025 titled Changes to the Ontario Building Code 2024 dated February 10th, 2025 be received for information. So with that, we will go to Mr. Agro. Oh, right, I forgot that. Councillor Bradford, Mayor Ganam. Thank you, Mr. Agro. Yes, your report is quite comprehensive. I think a few words to explain it or bring it down to English for us poor councillors would be great.
Well, basically, we have a new code under Regulation 163/24. It's in effect as of January 1st, 2025. And any building permits that were issued on or before December 21st, 2024, or which working plans and specifications are substantially completed on or before December 31st, 2024, and for which an application for a permit is made before March 31st of 2025 will still be under the old regulation, the 2012 Building Code. So in essence, if anybody still applies for a permit today, it will still be under the old building code unless they wish to use the new building code changes. Now, the impacts, it's on through most of the code, and in every section there's changes. In respect to accessibility requirements, change of use, defined terms, environmental, HVAC, fire protection, houses, small buildings, large farm buildings, plumbing, septics, radon mitigation, and 2-unit houses. So I submitted the changes with Schedule A with this report, giving the highlights of all the changes through the code. I can go through them if you like. I also put them on the website, our website, that you can view. And by all means, if you want to go through the ministry's website, it's very comprehensive with all the changes. To highlight, let's say, the changes that will impact this municipality would be the farm buildings, because anything over 600 square meters is going to have a big impact on their building styles. For example, let's say a chicken farm building is now going to have sprinkler systems, fire alarm systems, and it's going to increase the cost of construction. Also increase the cost in our staff in reviewing these plans. There's going to be more work involved, more training involved. So that's going to be a big impact for this community, is the farm buildings. The things. So again, you want me to go into more details, I'm not sure how far you want me to go with this.
Actually, if you could pick the highlights, in residential construction, will there be changes that require more costly inputs? What's happening in residential, what's happening in farm? You hit the biggest one on farm, and that is the...
Yeah, farming is the largest. Residential, not so much. There's the mitigation for radon. You have to put in some, have to spend some more money to mitigate that because Niagara area has been designated that there is radon. So any new builds will have to have special requirements put in for that. You have a question?
I was waiting for you to finish with the presentation of the
Yes.
overall comments, and then we would go to questions
Okay.
of committee, if that's okay. I've got you. I'll start over here. Mr. Agro, if you've concluded with your presentation of the high-level facts, I'll let you off the hook.
Okay, no, I can still give you some more information if you like.
Great.
For instance, on homes, carbon monoxide alarms will have to be in every bedroom now, as opposed to just outside of a bedroom. That's one example for a residential home. There's some further clarifications for restaurants now regarding not more than 30 seats must be designed under Part 3 rather than in Part 9. Mid-rise wood framing construction over 4 stories. There'll be additional compliance paths, combustible cladding. The design was required to have non-combustible cladding, so it's going to allow combustible cladding.
So if those are the highlights, Mr. Agro, I think that as we become more aware and members of council have had the chance to absorb these wonderful changes, we may come back. But I think I see some questions that want to be asked by council. So maybe you can hit the rest
Certainly.
of that as they ask them. Councillor Trombetta.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for the presentation, Mr. Agro. First time actually face-to-face, we actually see each other, so welcome. I know you're about a year now. You've been here over there a year now?
No, I've only been here 2 months.
2 months? Oh. So it's the year. Within the year, it's always good, right?
This is a great initiation, too.
Yeah. So if you started last year, that's 1 year, right? So that's
Okay.
Anyways, question to you, Madam Chair, through you, Madam Chair, to Mr. Agro. You said that there's going to be sprinkler systems for chicken barns. Question I had through you, Madam Chair, to Mr. Agro, is that these chicken barns obviously are big as we speak. So the only thing to obviously, other than them putting a cistern in, would be accessing a well and drawing from the well. Would the well pump be enough sufficient to be
A well pump, through the chair, a well pump would not be sufficient.
Will not be sufficient,
No.
right?
They would have to have some kind of a pond
So draw from a pond or a cistern?
or a cistern, yes.
So now these new chicken barns going in will be a pond or a cistern?
Yes.
Okay, that was my question, because obviously that's new, especially to our farming community, when they're building a new barn. Or what about sorry, through Madam Chair, what about modifications? Like we have some barns that are, I guess as existing. If there's modifying or they're assuming a property, do those rules also apply as well, or no?
On existing farm buildings, they won't be touched unless they're going to put an addition or
Put
something.
an addition, perfect. Okay, thank you. I was just curious because that one was a thought in my
While you're
head.
building things, yes.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
No one there? Okay. I see no one over here. I have a real initiation, by the way. I just thought I'd tell you, would have been asking you to sing what your presentation was. And we know you're very good at that. But
Next meeting.
my question is about washrooms and the like in residential homes. Is there going to be a need for residential homes to have wider doors as they go into washrooms to prepare for the need for people with wheelchairs or needing accessibility assistance.
As far as I know, for your single-family dwelling, no. There's no requirements that I know of for that.
Okay, so we both have some reading to do. Well, thank you, Mr. Agro, for being here. Thank you for your notes and presentation. And we'll be asking you back.
Thank you.
Okay, back to the agenda, item GS 03-25. That's a recommendation report, application for temporary use extension at 9127 Regional Road 20, file number 1601-10-23. The recommendations connected with that report are that recommendation report PD 03-2025, title recommendation report, application for temporary use at 9127 Regional Road 20, dated February 10th, 2025, be received. And that application for temporary use extension file number 1601-10-23 submitted by Mr. Larry Pomerantz for an extension to the temporary use bylaw A(T-13) for 3 years be denied, and that committee and council permit an extension of temporary use bylaw A(T-13) for a period of 4 months expiring on June 24th, 2025, as found in the attached bylaw Schedule D, which prohibits the storage of any additional barrels and to allow for, pardon me, the orderly removal of the barrels that are restored of the property, and that the applicant provide a site plan showing the location of the stored buildings and provides adequate fire routes to the satisfaction of the Township Fire Department. I need a mover. Councillor Trombetta, seconded Councillor Rayner. I was getting there. Questions on the matter? Councillor Rayner.
You did say you'd go from the right to the left.
Actually, I just saw your shirt.
Gotcha. Thank you, Madam Chair. Through to the Manager of Planning, Garrett. This basically is saying that this property is basically finished for the purpose to which it was initially approved on a temporary permit, that there's 4 months for this individual to remove everything from it, and at which point it will no longer be utilized for that purpose. Is that correct?
Through the chair to Councillor Rayner, that is correct. We are recommending to committee and council that an extension of 4 months be permitted, specifically for that removal of the rain barrels, as the applicant has indicated in their application, that come June, those rain barrels would be gone and sold anyway. So it allows for the orderly removal of the rain barrels from the property. And specifically, staff have put in the recommendation that no new barrels be brought to the site, as well as that a new temporary use agreement be applied for, that new temporary use agreement be signed as found in the attachment to the report, in order to regulate and control the removal of those barrels and the restoration of the site, as well as to realign the security that was collected. So the township's holding $25,000 in security. $5,000 of security was related to the cleanup of the site, and $20,000 security was related to the completion of the site to meet the standard of the town, so the berms be constructed and that the stormwater pond be constructed. So staff are proposing that security be completely realigned and all together tied to the removal of barrels and the restoration of the site. We believe that this 4-month extension will allow for a more orderly removal and cleanup of the site than if this were to get no extension this evening. And if it were up to some kind of other means such as bylaw enforcement. This seems to be a more efficient way to remove the barrels from the property if indeed they are sold and removed from the site as the applicant mentioned by June.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through to Garrett. There was other agreements that were supposed to have done, and the gentleman said they were 99% finished, which was regards to the berm and the drainage. And I believe he said there were even trees there, which I find hard to believe that if you bring trees there, you didn't plant them. They must be dying in their pots or something, which doesn't make any sense. Is there any monitoring or obligations with regards to this person to finish off the berms and everything as per the agreement when he first got this facility?
Through the chair to Councillor Rayner, staff did attend the property back in December, and we noted at the public meeting that it was from our observation that the site works as required through that initial agreement were not carried out. The applicant has since then, I think as recently as last week, provided us a letter from their engineer stating that some works have been completed, but there were some works that were still outstanding. I guess which confirms staff's recollection and what we saw on the site. That agreement is still in place. However, staff, through this recommendation, are proposing the cleanup of the property. So we no longer think that original agreement is needed because we, if this recommendation is supported, we would like to see that property restored to its original state. And the original agreement requires that the berms be finished and graded, that the storm pond be finished and graded. If a 4-month extension is provided, staff don't see the value in the landowner and the applicant investing time and money into making that work happen. We would rather see that work happen in the removal of barrels and restoration of the site to its original condition and realigning that security to ensure all of those things happen by the end of June.
Thank you. One further question, Madam Chair, through to Garrett. Do you have, I know there was a $5,000 deposit, you just mentioned $20,000. Does the township have $25,000 deposit right now in case something should happen that this doesn't fall through in the pattern to which he's been obligated to do and we have to come in and do it? Is there substantial funds to do exactly what you said and let's bring it back to its original state prior to this gentleman going there?
So the way the current agreement has structured that security is only $5,000 is for the removal of barrels if a temporary use extension is not granted. $20,000 is related to the site works, so the berms being completed. So if the owner were to finish completing the berms, completing the stormwater and erosion control measures, and planting the trees, according to that original agreement, staff would have to give that $20,000 back to the applicant. And so we're only left with $5,000 in security. So staff have recommended that we realign those securities that we do have through this new agreement to ensure that the entirety of that $25,000 is tied to the removal of the barrels and the restoration of the site.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I appreciate the efforts of staff, and I appreciate the direction they've taken in bringing this forward today. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just want to, again, thank staff for this application. Actually, it's put together, but I just want to make it note. Some people do reading it. You see the recommendation, but then it says, application for temporary use extension. But that's not what's happening here. We just want to make it on the record that it's just till June to give the time to get the barrels off the property is what this obviously report's reading. So I just want to make that on the record. I want to thank staff for putting this forward, but ultimately I want to thank the the residents. There's some of them are here tonight, not all of them, but the residents coming to us, coming to this committee, letting us know how you feel, reaching out to us on the phone. If, you know, I think it's always a pleasure to hear what's really going on. We all can't be everywhere all at once, but you as residents reaching out to members of the committee and the mayor gives us a lot of feedback and does help us understand really what's going on. We see it driving by and we mention it to other members of the committee, but you reaching out to various members of this committee does help. So again, I admire the passion of our residents, and without you, like, you know, things in this magnitude won't, you know, they could still be ongoing, but without the, you know, the help from the residents, I think that that was really important, at least to me and to members of this committee. So I really want to be thankful to them. So anyways, I don't know. One second. Again, I just wanted to say thank you again to the residents. I'm sorry about that. I was just reading something here in my notes. You know, sorry, I got thrown off reading something here in my notes here, but again, thank you, residents, one more time, and I really appreciate it. Thank you, Madam Chair. I don't know what was given.
So who, you going back that way, or start with me? Okay. Thank you, Madam Mayor, or Madam Chair. Okay. So, yeah, I know. I got to regrab my thought here. So I guess my question was, through you, Madam Chair, to our Director of Planning here. So I keep calling the wrong position now, aren't I? Is it Manager of Planning or is it Director? It's okay. His nameplate says Manager of Planning, but okay. I know. Well, I think the name was like Growth and Sustainability and
We're doing
planning.
it slowly. Councillor
Yes.
Maychuk got a new sign. It's there now, so we'll go to him next.
Okay, so apologies. So again, through you, Madam Chair, to our Director. What happens if it doesn't comply with this? I realize we have some security there, but I guess my question is, like, you talk about having to realign, which means there still needs to be another agreement. So what happens if there's a disagreement to the new realignment of a new agreement?
Through the chair to Councillor Riley, we this time around ensured that the signing of that agreement is tied to this approval, and it's written directly in the bylaw that this agreement must be signed upon the passage of the bylaw, or else this bylaw extension of 4 months is not applicable. Okay. So they would have the 4 months starts from the date of when their existing bylaw expires, which is at the end of the month. So they have approximately 2 weeks to review that. That's why staff have also we put the actual agreement in the report, so they have a copy of that. They have acknowledged receipt of that. So I guess there's an opportunity for them to appeal this decision as well, and we don't need to get into the specifics of that, but that is an opportunity for them to still consider if they were not satisfied with this.
So Madam Chair, so that was my my follow-up actually is the appeal process, should that be the avenue. So through Madam Chair, back to the Director, if that individual should choose to appeal it, does the 4 months, I guess, stop, I guess, at that point, and it gets obviously dealt with the LLT and whatever they decide one way or another, and then should it fall back? I'm just thinking a hypothetical here. Should the LLT agree with the council and the township, would whatever time's lost during that process go against him, or would he still be given the extra time? The other thing is LLTs can sometimes take a year or two. Does that buy him a year or two?
Through the chair to Councillor Riley, I don't want to get into specific discussions around what could happen in that specific scenario on this property. I will say in previous cases where things have been appealed, bylaw enforcement is typically paused while that appeal is being dealt with in a typical case, but this would be something that we'd probably need to consider in a confidential session if that were to come up.
Okay, that's all I have. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Sorry, Councillor Bradrick?
I have no questions now because Councillor Riley asked them both. Thank you.
I'm very sorry.
That's okay.
I'm going to go around this table and see, is there anyone having a question or questions?
Sorry, Madam Chair, you handed me a note. I don't know what it said on it. Can you want to maybe? Well, because it kind of messed up my statement while I was there, so I don't know if you want to. Okay, I don't know what the note was, so I don't know if you want to say it.
I can't see this from this seat. Seeing no other questions from members of committee, I will call for the vote. There is a motion on the table, duly moved and seconded. Mr. Clerk, will you put forward the motion, the vote, please? That motion carries 7-0. Thank you. We will move to the next item on the agenda, 10.3, item GS 04-25. The report is an application for zoning bylaw amendment, 7793 Yonge Street. The recommendations to that report are that recommendation report PD 07-2025 titled Recommendation Report Application for Zoning Bylaw Amendment 7793 Yonge Street, file number 1601-013-24 dated February 10th, 2025 be received, and that the application for zoning bylaw amendment for 7793 Yonge Street be approved in accordance with the attached zoning bylaw amendment. I need a mover and a seconder for that. Mayor Ganan, Councillor Maychuk. Questions regarding that report? Seeing none. Looking twice. I'll ask the clerk to put forward the motion, the vote. That motion carries. Item 10.4, GS 05-25. It is an information report, pardon me, zoning bylaw application and draft plan of subdivision application submitted by Smithville Holdings. And the recommendation is that information report PD 05-2025 titled Zoning Bylaw Amendment Application File 1601-003-23 and draft plan of subdivision file 2000-9224 submitted by Smithville Holdings dated February 10th be received for information. I need a mover. Is that what you're doing, Councillor? Councillor Rayner, I need a seconder. Oh, hi there. Councillor Maychuk. Questions? Councillor Rayner.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I believe when you brought this subject up through the public meetings that you had mentioned it was a technical report, but the information report and the technical report are basically one and the same, are they not, through you to Garrett?
I'd like to take that question to the clerk because I asked the same question while we were getting ready for the meeting, so I'll have the clerk provide an answer.
Through the chair to Councillor Rayner and to the rest of council, I treat them as interchangeable on the script. Sometimes it's technical, sometimes it's informational report, but for council and committee's consideration, they are one and the same. They should be considered one and the same.
So you said you consider them the same, so 1 month you may have the flavor of calling it a technical report, and the next month you have the flavor of calling it an information report?
Through the chair to Councillor Rayner, I do understand the miscommunication. We will ensure that they are always standardized across the board. However, in this instance, they were not. However, the result of the acceptance of that report will be one and the same with information and or technical report.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk, AKA CEO.
It's a mantle that's very heavy to wear. Are there any other questions with regard to this? Okay. Mr. Clerk, if you would put forward the question. That motion carries, yes. Thank you. We'll move on to item 10.5, GS 0625. Whoops. There- I know. It's too slow. Item 10.5, GS 0625, is a recommendation report regarding backyard chickens and zoning bylaw amendment and amendments to the animal care and control bylaw. It is file 1601-002-24, and the recommendation is that recommendation report PD 04-2025 titled Recommendation Report Backyard Chickens, Zoning Bylaw Amendment and Amendments to the Animal Care and Control Bylaw, file number 1601-002-24 dated February 10th be received, and that council approve the amending bylaw to zoning bylaw 2017-70 as found in Schedule D that permits backyard chickens within residential zones, in hamlet settlement areas, and in the agricultural area, subject to prescribed regulations. And that council approve the amendments to the Animal Care and Control Bylaw 2023-54 as found in Schedule B, and that council authorize the CAO to enter into an amending agreement with the Niagara SPCA to additionally cover the enforcement of the amended animal care and control bylaws. I need a mover and a seconder. Councillor Braderick. Mayor Gannan. Comments? Questions? Councillor Riley.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I guess I'll start things off here. So this has kind of been, I guess, in the works, in the making for almost 3 years, 2.5 years, thereabouts. And so I think, to some relief, it's nice to kind of be at this point, regardless on the outcome. I've heard from a variety of residents, and I think no matter what decisions made tonight, some are going to think, we haven't gone far enough. Some will think we've gone too far. I don't know if there's a happy median to this, but I think what's proposed before us is probably the best solution at this point. I think as we introduce anything new to the community, we always tend to tiptoe into it because, again, the size of our community and the lack of ability we have in enforcing it, just with the small enforcement or the small bylaw office that we have, it certainly is the right direction. I guess just for questions to our director, through Madam Chair, to our director, I was kind of looking for clarity towards those in the urban area who might wish to house the chickens internally, and if there's any restrictions to doing that, who are unable to house them externally. Pardon me?
Internally, externally.
I'm trying, so inside the house versus outside the house.
I was going to ask for that clarification. It's okay.
My apologies. As I gather my thoughts here, I probably could be a little bit more
I do house chicken internally, but
yeah.
yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I imagine a coop versus outside a coop. Sorry.
So through the chair to Councilor Riley, what staff have presented in this bylaw doesn't make a distinction of where they are housed. Presumably, if they are housed inside and nobody's going to know about it, is one avenue, I suppose. But our bylaw doesn't make any distinction. And on the just a note of enforcement, you'll see that the last line of the recommendation is that an amending agreement be signed with the Niagara SPCA and Humane Society. They actually have a contract with the township already on an annual basis to do the enforcement of the animal care and control bylaw. And so staff, in our meeting with the SPCA, which we had in preparation for this report, indicated that all bylaw complaints regarding even chickens or any type of animal that's covered under the animal care and control bylaw should just be directed to them, as we have a contract with them to do that enforcement. So any future bylaw matters we will be circulating to them, as well as any existing bylaw matters we'll be passing along to the SPCA, as there's already provisions in the animal care and control bylaw regarding the keeping of livestock. However, since staff have proposed to add a new schedule and make a number of amendments throughout it, there were some necessary changes that were needed to that agreement as well. So I don't know if that fully answers your question, but it more or less removes it off the hands of township bylaw staff to make those determinations of what's appropriate.
That does. Thank you. Through you, Madam Chair. I think, when you look at our community and what our bylaw office has to deal with, to have something like this also on their plate, and who knows where this goes in the future, let's say 5-10 years from now, sooner, more, should this be reviewed and considered to be more inclusive, or if it isn't, at least we know we have that a contract and that arrangement with those external parties to be able to help us manage that, because it can become quite laborsome to have staff deal with everything that they're already dealing with, and then should they have to deal with complaints related to this particular matter. I guess for clarity, and I don't even know if you can speak to this, but in a hypothetical situation, perhaps, I know there was talks, I think last time, about how it works if certain animals are identified as like therapeutic animals in some capacity, if there's a human rights component to it. And I guess that's maybe more what I was asking with those who may be able to hold we'll say the chickens in-house versus out-house, if that, where the planning aspect kind of steps in. And I guess that's what I'm really trying to gauge here, just so I can make sure that, that stuff's properly communicated. Is there a clear definition of there being an opportunity where somebody could not have to comply with the zoning if they had a special privilege and they were able to keep it in a situation where it was isolated and from the general public in an area that doesn't permit it?
Through the chair to Councillor Riley, I guess a few comments on that is, and I don't want to get into any specifics, but when we had those discussions with the Niagara SPCA, they are very accustomed to those kind of discussions and bylaw issues that go on. And we had, as a staff level, great confidence in that they will be able to handle those bylaw matters that may come before them. And of course, we strive at the township and through the bylaw department to obey any regulation that goes above and beyond what our zoning bylaw or animal control and care bylaw might require, because there's larger legislation that is above those, as you had mentioned, human rights and disabilities. So we definitely want to be respectful of those, but also be respectful of those that might disagree with those opinions or those thoughts as well. And that's where having the Niagara SPCA taking care of those enforcements matters is going to be a great asset to the township.
Okay. Thank you. That's all my questions.
Councillor Bradrick.
Thank you, Chair. Through you to our Director. Just a couple of quick questions, and thank you very much for all the work from your department and the passion that comes from this particular situation from both sides of the coin, I guess, so to speak. So two things. One is I noted that there was no reference, and maybe I missed it, of selling the eggs and or like country stands. We don't have a licensing, situation that we're provided for any kind of those type of facilities. In your research with other communities, did you find any bylaws mention those stands? And if so, was it about residents using them at their own risk?
Through the chair to Councillor Bradrick, maybe I'll start, and if Susan Smythe, our senior planner, she also did a lot of work with this report and a lot of fundamental background research into where we landed today. There were a number of bylaws that did have regulations and limitations on the selling of eggs that were grown from these chickens. I think in our staff discussions and reviewing those bylaws, those were more focused bylaws on urban centers. And since staff are not proposing that the urban area of Smithville be permitted to have backyard chickens, we did not present significant regulations. We wanted to still keep the regulations in an appropriate manner, considering that we're only looking at hamlets and as well as agricultural areas, which currently don't permit backyard chickens. So we did not propose any regulations around the selling of eggs. You'll see there's some regulations around the slaughtering of the chickens. We are proposing that that not be permitted on those lots, but that they take that off the property and to a proper facility or a zone that can allow for that. And second to that, we are not proposing any licensing regime here for a number of reasons. The municipalities that Susan Smythe actually has reached out to had very limited success with those types of projects and licensing, as well as they were quite administration heavy in dealing with that. So, and once again, since we weren't proposing them to be located in Smithville, we didn't see as great of a benefit in having a licensing program in our hamlets and in our agricultural areas.
And through you, Chair, and I certainly do agree that we shouldn't be, dabbling into that licensing capacity. And I guess I just really want to make sure that residents are aware that there is a risk of purchasing, the products from those stands and making sure that people have that proper information. And maybe that's something we'll be able to provide, as a courtesy to our community through, some of our social media when this gets out and about. And then my second and last question, through you, Chair, is I recall at the public meeting that we talked about a reevaluation of the bylaw, and Councillor Riley had just alluded to it in his comments as well, too. I do note that I don't see one in there, and I just wondered if you could speak to that.
Through the chair to Councillor Bradrick, that was mentioned as part of the public meeting, and we did actually even put in that technical report consideration around rolling out regulations and looking at additional areas as time progresses. We did not put that in this report for a number of reasons. The first reason being that staff were confident that this is the best approach to deal with this situation currently as it stands. And secondly, that the way that this bylaw has been undertaken, that since there are no changes to the Smithville area, those changes can happen at any time as council wills. So if council did desire us to look at it at a certain time interval, that could be definitely done. Or if council heard from members of the public over time that this is something they want to look at, they could raise it again. And staff would definitely be willing to relook at specifically Smithville and the urban center and what that would look like.
Okay, thank you very much for your thorough answer.
Thank you. Councillor Maychuk?
Yeah, through the chair, I had the question asked to me, so I'm going to ask staff. In the areas where it is allowed, based on what you're recommending, is there a minimum lot size or size of property? I didn't see that in the report, but maybe I missed it.
Through the chair to Councillor Maychuk, maybe I'll pass this one over to our senior planner, Ms. Smythe. She did a lot of research onto lot sizes because that came up quite a bit at the public meeting.
Yes, through Madam Chair. So yes, as part of the research in the environmental scan, we did do, or I did an assessment of the average lot areas. However, we thought it would be more conducive, and in our opinion, just to work towards the area dedicated to the coop, as well as to the run, as well as the location to the lot lines. We thought that that was more appropriate because if they can adhere to all of those, then it would seem conducive to allow for those chickens to be on those particular lots. Subject to the lot area, I guess it didn't really weigh in much value. So that's kind of the approach that we decided to take.
Thank you, Chair Chichok, and through you to Councillor Bradrick and to the rest of council, just as another little bit of information, building on Director Borma's response, just because that was generally the feeling of why a measure of extension or revision was not included, was also to assure council that this was the best approach judged by staff, as well as to ensure that our enforcement measures were not seen as a trial type of scenario where members of the community felt that these were just kind of placeholders for a future revision, where this was subject to change. We wanted to ensure that this was the best step forward to ensure that these are our rigid structure that we have in place now. And for sure, council can, as Director Borma stated, revisit this at any time in the future should questions or concerns be raised by the public. But administration felt that having these strong regulations in place with no attempt of visage of potential trial run, or this is just something for a measure right now. And also further to that, just where you had mentioned a potential public informational session regarding the eggs and the safety of selling. Our communication specialist right now is working on the updates to our website, which would include some information about backyard chickens, subject to ratification from council, and for sure we'll be including some information about not only safekeeping of chickens just for the public's, but also safe consumption from homegrown eggs as well, just for council's information.
Councillor Trombetta, did you wish to ask a question? I wasn't sure whether your hand was up.
It was.
There you go.
But
It's your turn.
I got jumped again. It's okay.
Well, you know, that's something that you've brought to the attention of the chair of committees before. I'll try to be more
That's okay.
careful.
Through you, Madam Chair, to Director of Plant Growth, but I'll say planning still, but I'm not there yet, but sustainability, growth and sustainability. It'll take me a while still. Bear with me. Through you, Madam Chair, to Mr. Borma. I know when we had this discussion, I know now that there was a lot size in the rural area, now it is no longer pertainable now anymore. Is that correct?
Through the chair to Councillor Trombetta, kind of building off of what Senior Planner Ms. Smith mentioned, most lots in the rural area and in hamlets are around an acre. We did look at a number of hamlets, and there were some variations between a half an acre and over an acre, but the vast majority of them require septic systems, which require some space. So we did not believe that it was needed to put a minimum lot size, but we did put in larger setbacks to the coop area and to the hen house, because staff believe that what's more important than lot size is just ensuring that there's a separation. If your neighbor doesn't appreciate chickens, that there at least be some kind of separation, as opposed to basing it off of lot size.
Okay, that's what I wanted to hear. Thank you. Thank you, Madam.
I'm looking for anyone else wishing to ask questions. I have a question. I got a phone call from a constituent today who had read the report, and being that they live in the outside of the urban area, their question was regarding the. So my question to staff is, council amend the zoning bylaw found in Schedule D that permits backyard chickens with residential zones in hamlets and settlement areas and in agricultural areas, subject to the prescribed regulations. And I guess in that, it kind of says agricultural areas. So there are people with 100-acre properties that are agricultural, ag zoning, ag only, and they have plenty of room, and they've never thought of themselves as having to have backyard chickens. Was it the intent of this bylaw to include those areas and, shall I say, farms in this bylaw?
So this bylaw makes no changes to the agricultural zones. So any agricultural zone is permitted to have any assortment of livestock, provided they meet any required nutrient management or minimum distance separation setbacks for their livestock buildings. This bylaw only addresses basically two zones: the rural residential zone, which is with kind of scattered throughout the agricultural area. So anytime there is like a surplus farm dwelling severance that this committee and council has had to deal with, staff take the severed residence out of an agricultural zone and bring it into a rural residential zone, noting that it's no longer agricultural, and it's usually around an acre in size. However, we have hundreds of 1 acre agricultural zones as well, or agricultural properties zoned agricultural as well, which would be permitted to have the whole gamut of livestock. So we use this as an opportunity to clean that up, that a rural residential lot in the middle of, oftentimes in the middle of a lot frontage of a farm field is going to be allowed to have those backyard chickens, as well as those low-density R1A zones in hamlets. And agricultural zones are not impacted at all by this. They'll be able to continue to have the large chicken barns to the hobby livestock that currently exist.
Thank you very much, Mr. Borma. That is exactly what I wanted them to hear from our staff. Thank you. Seeing no more questions with regard to this item, I would ask Mr. Clerk to put up the vote. That item is carried. Okay, item 10.5. No, we just did that one. Sorry, I apologize. Item 10.6, GS 0725. This is a recommendation report. The recommendation report PD 06-2025, titled Recommendation Report Interim Control Bylaw, Fulton Rural Employment Land Use Study, dated February 10th, 2025, be received, and that Council pass the interim control bylaw as attached to this report. I need a mover and a seconder. Madam Mayor? Councillor Riley. Questions or concerns regarding this report? Seeing none, Mr. Clerk, will you put forward the vote? That item carries. That brings us to the end of our staff reports. There's other business, and for that, this is an opportunity for members of council to bring forward other business matters of an informative nature. I'll start with Councillor Riley.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I figured I'd mention this here instead of waiting for my meeting later in case there's a bigger conversation that takes place from it. But I think it's a certain important matter to talk about, and it's the whole Buy Canadian. And so I guess my hope is from us, as we see the situation and the threat that's before our nation, and it's going to affect us provincially and it's going to affect us municipally, we need to make sure we're doing our part in standing up for Canadians, West Lincolners, if you want to call us that. And so I guess my question is, if I can ask staff, Madam Chair, is there, and maybe I'll go to our acting CAO for now. I kind of wish our other CAO was here. But I kind of want to make sure that as we go and we're putting out tenders and RFPs and all that stuff, that we're able to, in some capacity, I know we can't control it all, but somehow if we can get a notice of expression out there, that we certainly want to see that as bidders come forward, that they're utilizing Canadian assets, Canadian investments. It's, if there's materials, hopefully it can be Canadian made. I think we all have to take a strong stance in this going forward over the next few years. So I'm hoping that I certainly don't expect a yay or nay answer tonight. It's a very loaded question, but I think we need to make sure we're talking about this when we start getting stuff going, and hopefully staff is somehow finding creative ways to get that information out to people who are providing RFPs and who are applying for taxpayer-funded projects, that we're making sure we're doing everything we can to keep that money in Canada. So I felt like this was the easiest way for me to say it during this time versus when I'm in the chair spot and I have to remain neutral.
Thank you, Councillor Riley. I know you don't mean that you would rather have the other CAO. You just meant.
I meant that
as a compliment.
I didn't want to throw it
not
on his.
to burden someone who is
exactly,
new to the position.
I'd rather make it his problem.
Okay, so Mr. Clerk, do you have a reply to that?
Through the chair to Councillor Riley and the rest of council, while I do appreciate other CAO, that's nice to hear. We do not have technical provisions in our procurement policy that would denote specific country of origin for choosing products and whatnot. However, I do believe today, not to spread information, but I do believe that there was an executive order for steel and aluminum, an increase for 25%. I believe that was signed earlier today. That's obviously concerning as we, procure more services, whether that be material and or, trucks was a recent conversation that would be in our budget item now. There is nothing in our procurement policy that does, again, denote specific country of origin in terms of materials, whether that be, steel, aluminum at this time or in the future, which that is soft, which is wood or building material that our public works needs. We do look at it holistically as well. However, there is nothing that would stop us, whether just providing an explanation to council, choosing a bid that would be slightly higher in price than another, just based on maybe buying Canadian. That would be something that staff can take into account, especially as those costs would likely increase and then potentially other bids would be cheaper. That is definitely something that staff can take into account and that I will discuss with the other CAO when he returns, especially in light of the future threat of potential tariffs that would impact a greater scope of what the township would actually be involved in. So it's a point well taken.
Okay, and I appreciate that. And to clarify, I apologize for how I phrased the other CEO. It's more not to burden you. But again, I think, Madam Chair, I think as we kind of steer forward, we got to do everything we possibly can. And I realize, there's going to be limitations to that in terms of how bids come forward. I just feel like we need to make a statement when this stuff's going out, if we can prioritize that, if that's factored into the bid, however that needs to be. If you guys come back to us at a later time with an idea of how we can get that message out, it's very important. But honestly, we need to stand up as Canadians and we need to do our part. So that's all.
Thank you, Councillor Riley. And since we are on other business, I will continue around that portion of the table over to my left, subsequent to Councillor Rayner. So, Madam Mayor, you have nothing to add to the other business of the evening?
Nothing of that serious nature for sure. I just wanted to point out that the Mayor's Cup hockey tournament went on this past weekend, and West Lincoln's team is made up of all staff members, various departments, and they played well all weekend. And unlike last year where they won the B Division Championship, they lost it in a shootout, the final. So it was a little bit a sad loss, but they played extremely well, showed really good camaraderie, good sportsmanship, and I think they had a lot of fun as they did it, but they certainly played hard. And I just want to point out that there was an all-female line that played at one point in time, and there was a female goalie. So anyway, well done, West Lincoln team. So, and it was a long time to wait till council for that one. So,
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Councillor Rayner? No, I said subsequent to. I'm going to this side. I'm sorry. Would you like to have any comments with regard to other business this evening, Councillor Rayner? You may not get another chance. Thank you very much. Councillor Maychuk, this better be rookie kind of instigation of comments and talking at the table. But I got news for you. Mama ain't going to take that next time. Councillor Maychuk.
Through the chair to the CAO, who also takes on many roles around here, if you wanted to reach out to the public in terms of the need for crossing guards, I know some measures have been taken, but is there anything else that we should share at this time if anyone might be interested in the position?
Through the chair to Councillor Maychuk, it is always good to have publicity for this. We are always hurting for crossing guards. It's an absolutely crucial service that the township provides, and it's always useful to get the word out. So I appreciate any type of opportunity that I can to champion. Hey, please apply it to be a crossing guard. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bradwick.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Just a shout out to our Public Works Department for this weekend's and the previous Thursday's ice day / some snowy weather we had this weekend. Roads were clean and usable in a very quick period of time. And it appears as though we may be up against another weather storm later this week. And just a reminder to our residents to get your cars off the road and to stay off the road and give the trucks a time to clean the streets. So that was it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bradwick. Councillor Trombetta. No comments? Thank you very much. Just because this is other business, I think, in keeping with the mayor's comment about talking about talent and what is going on, I had the privilege of attending to the United Church, Smithville United Church, last evening, and I have to say that if you like music and local talent, it was a very enjoyable evening, and we should watch for upcoming concerts at the United Church, as well as with other organizations within the town. There's a lot of hidden talent out there, and makes for enjoyable evenings, although Super Bowl was on at the same time. Anyway, thank you for that. We'll move on to new business. And there's no new business for this evening. There's no confidential matters, so I call this meeting adjourned at 8:33.
They- they- So good evening, everyone, and welcome to this special council meeting. This should be a relatively short council meeting. It's in the middle of two meetings, in case somebody wonders what's going on out there. Today is February 10th, and I'm going to just say that for your information, you need to know that this meeting will be live streamed, and it certainly will be recorded and available on the Township's website. We're not going to start as we would normally for a council meeting with O Canada, but we are going to start with the land acknowledgement statement. The Township of West Lincoln, being part of Niagara Region, is situated on treaty land. This land is steeped in the rich history of the First Nations, such as the Hattaway-Wendourong, the Haudenosaunee, and the Anishinaabe, including the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation. There are many First Nations, Métis, and Inuit from across Turtle Island that live and work in Niagara today. The Township of West Lincoln, as part of the Regional Municipality of Niagara, stands with all Indigenous people, past and present, in promoting the wise stewardship of the lands on which we live. I'm going to ask Council if there are any disclosures of pecuniary interest and/or conflict of interest. And seeing none, there is no one in the gallery, and I would certainly think, Kevin, there's no one online.
Not seeing any, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. And so there's nobody. There are no appointments or presentations. There are no communications. There is no other business. And there are no confidential matters. But we are here to look at bylaws. And so I hear Councillor Rayner saying with him, why are we here? But we do need to look at the bylaws. And Councillor Chichok, you have that bylaw resolution, please.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. Moved by myself that leave be granted to introduce bylaws 2025-04 and 2025-05 and 2025-06, and that the same shall be considered to have been read a first, second, and third time with one reading and are hereby adopted. Second, that the mayor and clerk be and are hereby authorized to sign and affix the corporate seal thereto, any rule of this council to the contrary notwithstanding, and that bylaw 2025-04, a bylaw to amend the zoning bylaw 2017-70 as amended of the Township of West Lincoln, 2025-05, an interim control bylaw under Section 30 of the Planning Act, RSO 1990, CP 13 as amended regarding the use of lands, buildings, and structures within the hamlet of Fulton, and bylaw 2025-06, a bylaw to adopt, confirm, and ratify matters dealt with by council resolution.
Thank you. And someone to second those, please? Councillor Broderick, thank you. Are there any questions about any of the bylaws? Okay, seeing none then, Mr. Clerk. Should be on everybody's screen. Do you want to?
You might be in the wrong meeting. Do you support?
I'll support it, but it's not on.
Okay, did you go to the special council meeting?
Doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter. You're
You got my.
You're supporting? Okay, so that's good. Okay, and so I will now adjourn this meeting at 8:50. Thank you. There you go.
All right, good evening. We're going to get this going if everybody's ready here. Just to make sure you're awake, welcome. I'm Councillor William Riley. I'm the chair of our first Operations Committee meeting of 2025. I'll make a note to members of the public that comments can be made, let's try this again. Comments can be made from members of the public for a matter that is on the agenda by advising the chair during the request to address an item on the agenda section of the agenda. The public may submit written comments for matters that are on the agenda to jpaylove@westlincoln.ca before 4:30 p.m. on the day of the meeting for consideration by the committee. Comments received after 4:30 on the day of the committee meeting will be considered at the following council meeting, and comments submitted are included in the record. This meeting, for those of you who are at home watching, you're already aware of this, but for those who are here with us, is live streamed and will be recorded and available on the Township website. Excuse me. So our land acknowledgement statement is, the Township of West Lincoln, being a part of the Niagara region, is situated on treaty land. This land is steep in the rich history of the First Nations, such as the Wendwonk, the Haudenosaunee, and Anishinaabe, including the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation. There are many First Nations, Métis and Inuit from across Turtle Island that live and work in Niagara today. The Township of West Lincoln, as part of the Regional Municipality of Niagara, stands with all Indigenous people, past and present, in promoting the wise stewardship of the lands on which we live. So at this point, I'll look around the horseshoe here to see if there's any changes in items of the agenda, the order of the items on the agenda. Not seeing any. Are there any disclosure of pecuniary interest and/or conflict of interest? Not seeing or hearing any. Appointments, we don't have any appointments tonight. Request to address items on the agenda, so our gallery's empty tonight. I'll go to our IT to see if we have anyone virtually.
Not seeing any, Mr. Chair.
So we have no one to address items on the agenda. That brings us to consent agenda items, which there are none. That brings us to communications, which also there are none. Staff report, item OC 0225, and it's the Manager of Operation, Trey, and Director of Operations, Mike DePaula. And the report is O01 2025, 2024 Water Quality Annual Report. And the recommendation is that the information report O01 2025, titled 2024 Water Quality Annual Report, dated February 10th, 2025, be received for information. If I can get a mover and a seconder. I got Mayor Ganan, I have Councillor Braderick. Are there any questions or comments? Not seeing or hearing any. I'll go to the clerk for the first vote there. And that is unanimously carried. Thank you. That brings us to the next item. Item OC 0325, and it's a report O02 2025 2024 Water Distribution System Annual Report. The recommendation is that information report O02 2025, titled 2024 Water Distribution System Annual Report, dated February 10th, 2025, be received for information. I will need a mover and seconder for that. Mayor Ganan and Councillor Maychuk. Any questions or comments? Mayor Ganan?
Thank you. It didn't matter which of these, Mr. Chair, that I pull. Usually they're in consent, and since I started in 2016, I have always pulled them. As soon as I was on council in 2016, I had to take that water course based on what was going on in Walkerton. And so I have always read those reports carefully, knowing that we carry the responsibility for safe drinking water. And I've always taken it as an opportunity, with any of the reports that come forward, to thank staff for doing that on our behalf. You know, those of us who are sitting around the horseshoe assume that staff will do their job and do it well, and the reports certainly are proof of that. So if Mr. DePaulo, Director, if you would please, I thought Trey might be here, but if you would pass on to him and his crew how grateful we are that they are continuing to do a good job of keeping our water supply safe, I'd appreciate that. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Any other members of council? Not seeing any. I'll just add one quick message for the director as well. If there's anything more council can do to ensure that we are always in compliance with safe drinking water, and if there's anything further we could do to improve, anything should come down the line that needs improving, please don't ever hesitate to reach out to us. That is certainly a priority to us. So, Okay, I'll go to the clerk for the vote. That was 2. Okay, that carries unanimously as well. So that brings us to item 3, item OC 0425, report O03-2025-2024, DWQMS management review summary, and that is information report. And the recommendation is that recommendation or information report O03-2025 titled 2024 DWQMS management review summary dated February 10th, 2025 be received for information. If I can get a mover and seconder, I'm going to call on Councillor Trombetta and Councillor Rayner. Any questions or comments? Mayor Ganan?
No, I have another one through you, Mr. Chair.
Absolutely.
So just a reminder, I know that some members of council have done the retraining, but something that has changed. So each term now we will be expected to do that, and the email came quite a while back, and then I know Trey sent another one. So just a reminder to members of council that if you haven't done that yet, that's one of our obligations. So thank you.
Absolutely, and I will add that today I was actually, Trey helped me get the login details so I can sign on and start my training. It's about 3 hours online that we have to do, so that will hopefully be resolved by tomorrow. Councillor Rayner?
You should be able to do it in 2. I did it last week. The old man can do it. You can do it faster.
You're wise. You're a wise man. I don't know if I have your
the
wisdom.
only thing that I took this course when it was actually a course. You had to go to the region to take it. And the thing I don't understand is we always took it at the beginning of our term, and this is year 3, so I'm going kind of, what? You know, that's where I'm sitting right now, like, you know, it's a little late, the horse has left the barn and it's down the road, so I'm just wondering, you know.
Okay. Well, I'll ask the director, maybe he can speak to the timing.
Through the chair to Councillor Rayner, the reason why the memo went out recently was because we do have a new council member around the horseshoe here. So originally we were just going to ask the new council member to take the training, but every year we go through a bunch of internal and external audits with respect to our DWQMS and our drinking water quality standards. And one of the recommendations that came out during the internal audit was, even though most members of council have taken the standard of care training in the past, and because there's a lot of changes to the legislation, through our internal audits, we made a decision and a recommendation from the internal auditor was it'd be a very good idea, and it's highly recommended that every term of council redo the training, whether they're returning or whether they're new. So with the opportunity of getting Councillor Maychuk caught up to speed with the standard of care training, we just wanted to follow the recommendations of the internal audit to make sure that all council redo the training, whether they've done it in the past or not. So that was the reason why we're kind of doing it now and not the first year of council, but it's always about continuous improvement. So next term of council, we'll make sure that everyone does the training immediately.
Excellent. Councillor Rayner, you have a follow-up?
Yes. The course is a little long. It's detailed. You really have to pay attention. And now that I know it was caused by our newly elected councillor, I wasn't happy about what you had me do, buddy. This is not fun. But anyways, yeah, it's unfortunate that I figured, like you get your driver's license, they don't ask you to go out and redo your driver's license, but there's a lot of road things that change. So, I mean, I've done the thing twice already in all the years I've been here. Now they wanted me to do it a 3rd time. But it was the same guy, Stan, that killed those people in Walkerton, so that hasn't changed. So I don't really, you know, it took a lot of time. You really had to pay attention, and, you know, it was good, I guess, as a refresher, but like I say, in year 3 seems like the horse has long left the barn. That's all. If the auditor found it, should have said, well, we've already missed a few years on this council. Maybe we should ensure that in the future it starts at the beginning of new council, because this one is so far along. It just seemed a little bit late to me. That's all.
Well, I hear the point there. I think, considering finding it when we did is probably better than not acknowledging it at all. And as we mentioned, it's it's, if the idea was that we were just gonna push it off and wait till next term, well, that doesn't necessarily do any justice. If there's information that we need to be aware of prior, that we could have been utilized. So that's all it is. I get where you're coming from, and I understand the inconvenience it's clearly put you in, but at the same time, I think, when it comes to clean drinking water and fresh drinking water, if we have to get inconvenience halfway through the term to get refreshed on that education, I have no problem with it.
If I may add,
Go for
when you
it.
go through this course, they will indicate to you that if you fail to meet the requirements, you could be charged and you can go to jail.
Yes.
So, I mean, basically, it means that you have to be respectful of the situation with the water treatment, but by the same token, we are arm's length from it. I don't think any of us know where they go to do the testing here. I don't think we know anywhere about what's involved in doing it. So we are so far away from the actual involvement that they could basically put a shovel full of manure in the line and we wouldn't know about it because it was manure that caused it in Walkerton. So really, they're really stretching it as far as I'm concerned to say council is at fault if people in this township died because they were negligent when we have nothing to do with testing it. In fact, if I'm not mistaken, through you, Mr. Chair, through the director, the people here don't even test the water. Like I have a dairy degree. We have microbiology labs in the dairy to check everything. They don't have petri dishes here. They don't do the microbiology work. They send it out, do they not?
Through the chair to Councilor Rayner, it's more than just doing the testing on the water. There's a lot of things involved to make sure the drinking water distribution system is kept in safe condition. We do have licensed water operators that sample the water. We're required to take a number of different samples. We also exercise our valves and flusher hydrants to keep the system safe, following the legislation and following our operation procedures. The standard of care training that council is legislated to take is basically a course that is meant for the governing body of the owner of the system. So it just refreshes the importance of the legislation and just makes you aware of what decisions council makes in order to provide safe drinking water, to follow the Safe Drinking Water Act. I hope that helps.
I understand that, through Mr. Chair, to the director, but they do not do any bacteriological testing in this township, do they not? They send the samples out?
I totally, through the chair to Councilor Rayner, I totally forgot to answer that question. You're right, they only take the sampling, but then they send it to a licensed lab to do the results.
We're caught here, Mr. Chair, when you read this very carefully. We have properly trained people that evaluate the water. We don't have anything to do with that. The results come back in the report from the director, we review it. If the decision of the township is that we need something to be done to ensure the quality of the water remains at the level that the government expects it to, and we turn it down, that's when we are in trouble.
Correct.
So basically, we are very much arm's length, even though we can go to jail. That's why it seems so ridiculous. But the recommendations coming through from the people who are properly trained, that are online, that are looking at the water, that are taking the samples, that are getting the results back from the lab, they're the ones who make the recommendations from us. If we fail to follow on their recommendations, that's when we get in trouble. So this is a no-brainer. Listen to what comes through from the director, and whatever they need for the water, you bloody well better approve it, or you may get a free vacation. Well, that's basically what this is all about.
All right.
I mean, it's just,
I hear you.
we
Okay,
are so far removed. That's
okay.
why I find this very ridiculous how they're
All right.
going down on it.
I hear what you're saying, and I think for clarity for those at home who may be watching, we certainly get your passion, to put it politely. But again, not to belabor this, we have staff who are some of the most qualified people in the province who are doing what they're required to do to ensure that we are safe, the community is safe, and it's going to other specialists who are sampling it. I get we're not hands-on ourselves with it, and as councils, a governing body, our job and our education that we're given, part of this helps us ensure that we're asking the right questions at the right time. We're reading the reports. We know what to look for from the governing side of things. We have staff that deals with how to actually implement that from the mechanical side of it, right? And so again, just to kind of move things along, and I know where you're going at it, but I'm just saying I want to make sure the wrong message isn't going out there at the same time. Like, you know, we are in a really good shape.
One further comment. When you take that course, you will find out that the person responsible for 8 deaths in Walkerton pleaded guilty to the least charges and only served 4 months in jail. And they're telling us if we don't approve what happens here, they're going to throw us in jail, and a guy could kill 8 people, and he's only in for 4 months. That's why this is so ridiculous to me.
Okay.
That's my comments.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Matrick.
Through the chair, I just wanted to say that I found the course informative, and I certainly learned a few things, but it made my day. 5 years at university, I never got 100%, but I had to get 100% on that test, so it made my day.
Okay, thank you. Well, I'm glad to hear you did so well, and you had a much better experience than Councillor Rayner. Any other members of committee? Mayor Gannon? So I see your hand half up, half down.
I was up before, and then I thought we don't need to prolong it. But the one place where we are responsible is the financial decisions we make. And so a perfect example of that would be the Region Council is also fully responsible and liable there. And if you think about the number of spillovers that they've had, the breakages, things that are not running well in that extremely old infrastructure, it makes me really grateful that ours is not as old as the city of St. Catharines or Niagara Falls or Welland, who are experiencing a lot of difficulty at this point in time. So I think ultimately the time that Councillor Rayner is referring to before Walkerton, these regulations and rules were not in place. And they have been put in place because of the Walkerton situation. So I think at that time to have found somebody, you know, guilty was very different. They were, but they were also ignorant of the implications and what they were doing incorrectly. Now we know, and I think the punishment is more severe. I don't know what it would be. I hope we never see that anywhere, you know, in Ontario in terms of that. That's why the regulations are in place. So. Okay. But our decisions are financial mostly. If we decided that, you know, we needed to save money on our budget and we didn't fund appropriately, that's where we're held liable. So
yes,
anyway,
I
thank
appreciate you providing that extra clarity for the public. Councillor Trebetta, I know you have an extensive background with water. Did you want to chime in here?
I just think since the Walkerton thing, I think I guess it's training for all. If something does go down, at least you can say that, you know, if you refused it, you'd be in more trouble by refusing any train that's provided by the municipality. So now that it's been offered, it's, you know, if you refuse or don't decide to do it, I guess in some senses, and something bad does happen, you will be hauled in. So that's one thing that I do know, especially with the change with Walkerton. So again, staffs, again, these are, if you're going to put in a construction sense, or Mike, you worked in, Councilor Rayner worked in, you know, E.D. Smith and plants, or toolbox talks. If you refuse to do a toolbox talk and something happens, what happens? And obviously he knows what toolbox talks are, and he's kind of giving me the wink because he understands. So that's what these are, and I think they're important for all measures and all municipalities. So again, it's been given to us, we have to do it, and you can't refuse it. So.
Excellent.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, thank you for your feedback. Yeah, and again, for those who are watching at home who might be confused by what it is a responsibility as well as one of the, I guess, the risks when you run for office and your responsibility ensuring safety. And as you heard, for some members of council, really concerned with how the level of accountability could be held for if we were negligent and not making a better effort to ensure that when we're drinking the water and we have the water, you know, it's at its purest, it's at its, you know, it's safest, and there should be a standard held to that, especially, you know, we need to learn from our past. So again, I'll move on at this point, but, you know, it's certainly something we don't take lightly, as you can hear, and something we'll continue to make sure is always at 100%. So, okay, Mr. Clerk. Acting CAO. All right, that carries unanimously as well. That moves us to our next item. It's item on the agenda 9.4, item OC0525, although I think my report here actually says a 0, not an O. And it's a report O04-2025, the St. Anne's reconstruction, Enbridge gas relocation, and CP rail crossing upgrade. The recommendation is that recommendation report RFD O04-2025, titled St. Anne's Road Reconstruction, Enbridge Gas Relocation, and CP Rail Crossing Upgrade, dated February 10th, 2025, be received. And that council approve the administration to proceed with issuing purchase commitment letters to Enbridge Gas for $965,266.74, excluding HST, and CP Rail for $158,265.71, excluding HST. I need a mover and seconder. We got Councillor Chichuk and Councillor Bradrick. Any questions or comments regarding this? If go ahead, Councillor Trombetta.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you, Mr. Chair, to the director. There's this, the CP Rail crossing upgrade there on, that's obviously on 16 Road, I'm imagining, or is that further down?
Through the chair to Councillor Trombetta, it's the crossing right on St. Anne's.
Right
There's
on
an
St.
at-grade
Anne's there?
crossing at St. Anne's.
Okay.
Just north of 16
Just north of
Road.
16 Road
Yeah,
there, okay.
that's
So there,
correct.
will there be like, I know when it comes to CP Rail, will there be, I guess, temporary road closures, I guess, when that takes place?
Through the chair to Councillor Trombetta,
If you can answer that
yes,
now.
there'll probably be a road closure when they do that work. I think CP Rail, in order to do that crossing, they're going to use a concrete panel similar to what was done on Industrial Park recently. I think it's about 1 week of work.
Okay.
So there'll probably be a closure during that time.
Okay. Now, just through you, Mr. Chair, too, I know municipalities work a little bit different than more, I guess, information. CP kind of comes in, does their stuff. Will there be adequate notice? I guess that's a lot of traffic coming in and out of that area, I guess, bopping to both roads there on St. Anne's and 16, right? So.
Through the chair, Councillor Trombetta, yeah, we'll make sure we are aware of their schedule, and our project manager will communicate that to the residents, and our communication specialist will do a media blast as well.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Excellent, thank you. Any other members of the committee? Not seeing or hearing any, I'll go to our clerk for the question. Okay, that carries unanimously as well. Takes us to new business, which there's none. Oh, sorry, I jumped things. It takes us to other business. I know we just had a meeting there where some people spoke. Any other business? All right, I'll just, as I won't labor this too much more, I'll just throw it out there. Buy Canadian. New business, none. Confidential matters, none. And I'm going to adjourn the meeting at 9:16 p.m. Thank you very much.